Model behavior. You know, I never thought I'd end up like this. Not in a million years. But here I am, typing this confession on a second-hand typewriter in a little cottage in Italy, where the sun always sets late and the olive trees whisper secrets. My name's Sammy. I was a model, the kind that strutted down runways and made photographers grovel. But that life? It was all a lie. Let me tell you how it started. I was 20, yeah, with curves that turned heads and a mouth sharper than a switchblade. Men couldn't stand me, but they still wanted me. I'd snap at them and toss their gifts. I slapped a famous photographer in New York once when he tried to adjust my pose. I'd scream and throw things when I didn't get my way. I under contract with Owen and Saks, a publishing company with several fashion magazines, and I was the top model in the stable. The company had several fashion magazines in its portfolio and I posed for all of them. My agent said the big boss wanted to see me, Kenneth Owen himself. A private jet, a private island. I figured it was my chance to finally get ahead. My contract was up for renewal, so I thought this was going to be the perfect opportunity to launch my career into stardom. The mansion was like something out of a fairy tale: marble floors, Negro Caribbean servants in crisp uniforms, a pool so blue it looked unnatural. My room had a velvet canopy bed, silk sheets the color of rose petals. But the notes? They came under my door every morning. Meet Mr. Owen in the library at noon. I wore a red dress for the first meeting, silk, smooth as melted fire, with a plunging neckline that dipped into a V, lace trimming at the hem. The fabric clung to my hips and slid dangerously over my thighs as I walked, and I'd practiced the glare in the mirror until my cheeks ached. I was sexy as hell. He stood to shake my hand, but I had to crane my neck to look at him. He was at least 6'2", built muscular and strong jaw line and deep recessed black eyes. He wore a white collared shirt, sleeves rolled up showing his thick forearms and his hairy chest showing. He looked like a model himself. I couldn't believe it. How did this guy become a publisher? We both sat and Mr. Owen just sat there sipping wine as I talked, his eyes fixed, his jaw tight. I went on, proud as ever, about my photo shoots, my contracts. He didn't say a word. When I brought up my vision for my career, that's when he stood up. He strode over to me, then gave me a swift slap on the face. He stood over me for a moment just looking at my reaction with zero reaction himself. Reflect on yourself was all he said. He said it cold as ice. I froze, tasting blood in my mouth. He towered over my sitting profile and I looked down to the floor, humbled for the first time in my life. He turned around and left the room. The meeting was over. In my room, I thought about what happened. I wanted to leave, no, rather I wanted to stay to teach him a lesson. I was thinking about how to slap him back, tell him he's worthless and that I was quitting. At the same time, his image kept racing in my mind. So tall and strong, just dominating me like that, humbling me and putting me in my place. I was oddly excited. To be honest, I always thought I was only into women. I found men repulsive, always groveling at my feet. I couldn't stand all their attention, their gifts, and the marriage proposals. But this was the first time I couldn't get a man's image out of my mind. As I showered that evening, I felt a burning in my insides and started to touch myself at the thought of his arms and the sharp sting of his hand across my face. I hated him and respected him at the same time, and it drove me mad. I fell asleep thinking about him. Next day, a note arrived under my door with instructions for the next meeting. This time I wore white dress, satin, sleeveless, the bodice tight enough to make my breaths shallow. Stockings clung to my legs, sheer as ghosts, and my hair was pinned up in an elaborate twist, my neck bare. He didn't greet me, but sat on his chair. I asked if I could sit and he motioned. He watched me, silently, as I talked in a higher-pitched voice. I didn't do any of the things I had planned. I didn't argue, didn't sass. Mr. Owen, I'm sorry for my behavior yesterday. I couldn't believe the words coming out of my mouth. Who was saying this? He nodded. Better. But then he said, get on your knees. My heart jackhammered, pulse thrumming in my wrists as the air's chill seeped through the dress's thin fabric. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. And even more, I couldn't believe my body's actions. I stood up, walked to the middle of the room and got on my knees. My stomach clenched, looking down at the floor. He walked over to me, again towering, his finger hooked my chin, lifting it. "Rise," was all he said. I rose. He was about a foot taller than me. He took my shoulders and turned me around. I could feel his breathing from behind me. I wanted to turn around and claw his eyes out, but his right hand slid under the slit in my dress, brushing the lace of my panties. His hands traced the edges and then his hand moved over my belly. I immediately started soaking myself. I felt my insides open up, floodgates open. I could feel my defiance crumble as his other hand reached over my breast and started stroking. My hands were trembling and I didn't know what to do, so my hands pushed out away from my sides, not punching and scratching but just in a holding pattern, watching what was happening to me. I choked back a sob that might have been pleasure or rage. He whispered, "That's my good girl." I hated him. God help me, I was wetter than the ocean outside. He turned me around, guided my chin to his open mouth and consumed me, pushing his tongue deep into me, mapping the inside of my mouth. He drew me to his body and I could feel his growing stiffness against my stomach. It was huge, like as if he was hiding a weapon inside his pants. He continued to explore my buttocks as he kissed me and just as fast as it started, he spanked my ass and told me to get out of his sight. I paused, stunned, not moving. He said, "Did you hear me?" I nodded and ran out of there. The night passed with me fantasizing about being touched by him. I couldn't help myself, I had to diddle myself to sleep. The poolside meeting came next. He was there sitting on a chair, with a scotch and next to him was a table with new Chanel outfits, satin, chiffon, everything plucked from some fantasy. "Show me you're worth it," he said. I nodded silently and took the first dress to the powder room next to the pool. The first was a gold halter that accentuated my hips, so tight it bit into my flesh. The second, a slinky black number open to my navel, left me bare to the Caribbean breeze. Each time I walked to him and he examined my body with his hands. Touching my breast, pinching my buttocks, caressing the soft skin on my inner thighs. Finally, he slid a baby pink sheath toward me, its fabric so thin it might have been gauze. In the powder room I peeled it on, the material tickling my nipples. When I stepped out, the sun gilded the fabric, turning my body into a living sculpture. I walked over to him to be inspected again and he said in a deep voice, "Kneel." This time, I did without thinking, my knees hitting the marble floor. He petted my head, ran fingers through my hair until it felt like a cage, his touch deliberate, possessive. He caressed my cheek. I looked away meekly and he turned my head so that he could look into my eyes. "You're close, almost there," he said. He was reading my face and could see the fear and the surrender. I hated that he could see it. "Stand," he said and I did. Undress was his next command. I shook my head no, but he was unmoving, waiting, looking into my eyes sternly. I then started to unzip the dress, my hands fumbling, the scrap of fabric pooling at my ankles. I did this slowly, then stood there frozen. Stockings clung to my thighs, my chest bare, the sheath's lace panties the only thing between me and the air. He stood up and examined me, eyes consuming my skin. I felt like property being inspected. It made me start gushing again down there, this time to the extreme. My head was getting dizzy with excitement. He pushed on my shoulders gently, guiding me to my knees. Then I saw his huge bulge. It was even bigger than before, pushing up against his belt. He started to undo his pants and I began to see my life flash before my eyes. This felt like me jumping off a cliff I could never come back from. His thick manhood was then presented to me and I stared in awe. It was as hard as a rock and I could see it bob up and down. He guided its head down to my nose and I sniffed the clean smell of it. It intoxicated me. He then pushed the round tip into my mouth and for some reason, it felt so natural slipping in. My mouth moistened and my head started to naturally move back and forth. I had never done something like this before, but it felt instinctual. He groaned as I kept worshipping him with my mouth. I was pouring juice down in my insides and my inhibitions crumbled. His breathing quickened and he started to make grunting noises. He said, "Don't move your head," and grabbed the back of my head sternly, and the next split second he burst inside of me. Shot after shot, I could feel it in the back of my throat. The liquid gushed out of my mouth as he held my head close to him. It was hot like soup and the flavor was so strange, something I couldn't describe. He continued to finish in my mouth until it stopped pulsating. He said, "Swallow," like a command. I proceeded to take in what was still in my mouth, gulping it down. It was the strangest, most sexy feeling I had ever had. "Clean it," was his next command, and I proceeded to clean off all the stickiness from his manhood, carefully licking off each bit. I knelt down, but hitting my heels and my hands on my thighs. I looked up like a puppy dog waiting for further directions. "Good, very good," he said, as he turned around and fixed his clothes. He walked away and didn't say anything. That night, after I was served dinner by his Negro manservant, I took a bath and ruminated about what had happened. I was violated and used, but at the same time I wanted to experience it again. I played the meeting over and over again in my head, each outfit, each caress, and the explosive finish. I touched myself for hours just playing this strange movie in my mind. I felt oddly secure and accomplished. I pleased this powerful man and it made me feel valuable. The next day came a note for a meeting in the mansion's cellar. That's when it got real for me. When I got there, it was slightly cold, dark, and badly lit. I saw the many wine bottles in cases, and the Persian rug was a contrast to the stone walls and strange oil painting portraits hanging there watching over us. He was sitting on a red velvet couch, sipping on some wine. He had his legs crossed when I entered the room, and I instinctually asked for permission to approach. "Sir, may I come in?" He motioned with his hand. I stood in front of him in a tight satin black sleeveless evening gown. It had gold trim with gold lace adorned neckline and hem. The long slit came all the way up above my hip, exposing my entire leg each time I took a step. "Kiss my shoes," was his first command in a low voice. I couldn't believe it, but for some reason, my body moved to my hands and knees and I found myself kissing the brown leather shoes. I then knelt in front of him like an obedient dog waiting for my master's command. He stood up and took my hand and I stood. He led me to the corner where there was a large old steel hook attached to the wall. It seemed like a hook to age ham. On the lamp stand next to the hook was several items. What looked like small black silk scarves. He took the first one and blindfolded me. I stood there shaking, already getting wet in anticipation. Then he bound my wrists in front of me, tight. He made multiple knots, making me think I was in for something I was going to fight him for. He then took my arms over my head and hooked my wrists to the hook. It stretched me tall as my heels were barely on the ground. I whimpered, "No, please no." He ignored me and started to inspect again with his hands. All over my body. My breasts were caressed softly, my neck was kissed, my shoulder bitten, his hands consuming my ass. His hand then slipped through the slit of my dress and into my panties. He could feel that I was totally soaking and proceeded to rub. It reminded me of the first time he did this, but I was even wetter this time. I moaned and moaned. This went on for several minutes until I couldn't take it anymore. He then said in a low growl, "Beg me." For some reason, the thought was already on the tip of my tongue and I answered immediately. "Please take me, Mr. Owen. Please take me." His finger was still rubbing me. He responded with, "Who do you belong to?" I immediately answered, "You, Mr. Owen, I belong to you." His then asked, "What belongs to me?" I responded in a whimper again, "My body, my mind, everything, all of me belongs to you." Even though blindfolded, I could feel he was grinning as he pulled back and I could then hear him undo his pants. My breathing was fast now, my heart pounding, my head getting dizzy. He took both of my legs into his arms and lifted me up, with my legs spread apart. I could feel his hardness against my buttocks, moving back and forth, grazing my wetness. He positioned himself and started putting into my open wound. I was so wet, it slipped inside and I screamed in pain. He progressively moved deeper inside, penetrating my soul. I kept screaming in pain as it moved in and out, shallow at first then more deeper. He kissed me, open mouth, and our tongues tangled, and I immediately had an earth-shattering climax. Waves and waves of pleasure washing over me. I convulsed. I could feel the bindings on my wrists pull on the hook. He was more aggressive now, moving his large shaft faster as I could feel my insides being torn up. He took and took, my body belonged to him and he acted like it. Like I was just a doll, a plaything. He was so dominating I could feel his power inside and outside. My mind was fluttering in a daze as another climax rocked my body. I screamed even louder this time. He started to pump with vigor now, the speed was impaling me, nailing me. I could feel my spirit breaking and me giving in completely to him. Kissing me hard, he exploded inside me and I could feel the hammer pounding my inside, thud after thud. I yelled again and could feel the slickness inside me as he moved his rod in short strokes. It was complete. My surrender. After he had calmed, he unhooked me and I folded to the ground. He lifted me up to my knees and inserted his sticky wet member into my mouth and said, "Clean." I did as I was told, consuming every drop that my mouth could find until the flavor disappeared into my stomach. He picked me up and took me to the couch, where he held me in his lap, caressing me and kissing my forehead and cheeks. He whispered into my ear, "Good girl," and it made me beam with happiness. I felt so complete, the release of pressure, the burden of being who I was, all washed away. My thoughts were only to please this man and it made me feel so free and careless. My thoughts went to the future where my plans were to only do this for the rest of my life and it felt serene. I stayed with him for over a month, progressively learning new ways to please him. I bathed him, massaged him, pleased him orally as he took phone calls. I was at his beck and call. Being his made me so happy and the love I felt for him was so complete it made my head feel woozy. Now here I am in Italy, in his secluded country cottage outside of Sardinia. When he is here, I cook meals, scrub floors, wear aprons with floral patterns, peonies stitched in faded blue thread, the fabric scratchy against my sensitive skin. The basement has chains and straps, all of which I clean and polish meticulously. And when he's in town, he ties me up again. It's humiliating, yes, but I crave it. Once while in a booth in a local cafe, he made me kneel and pleasure him. The strangers at the other table staring at me, their eyes drilling into the back of my head as he bobbed my head up and down. In another night, in the cottage's dusty attic, he let his friends take turns on me, their hands on my waist, their groans echoing as they ravaged me from behind while tied to a table. I used to think I'd never let a man touch me, but now? I'm his girl through and through. I wear the silk stockings he brings me, the ones with his initials embroidered in gold, and I wear my shame like a crown. They say love is weakness, but I've never felt stronger. My voice is softer now, my laugh girlish again. I don't need runways or praise. This life, being his little servant, his perfect toy, is all I want. When he visits, I wait in the corner, knees bent, apron tied tightly, my nakedness hidden beneath layers of lace. He'll come in, sharp-suited, and reach for my waist, pulling me up and into a room where the candles cast shadows on the walls. There, he'll strip me bare, his hands guiding me to my knees, his fingers tangling in my hair. I'll taste his anger, his control, the salt of his sweat, and it's all I need. Even when he spits insults between thrusts, even when he drags his nails down my back, leaving trails of fire, I'm his. Only his. One night he dragged me to his olive grove, the moon picking out the lace of my new gown as he pressed me against a trunk, his hardness grinding me until I trembled. I thought of the photographers, their lenses hot on my skin, their groveling words. But Mr. Owen didn't want admiration, he wanted submission. And I gave it, willingly, screaming his name as he took me in the open air, as if breaking me over and over again could build me anew each time. I hope you never find me. But if you do, just remember, a girl can change. Especially when she's found the only man who could break her, and in breaking her, make her whole.